When I was a nipper in Scotland, and bear in mind, dear viewer, this was 60 years ago, I would go from time to time with my mum to get new shoes. This would typically be before school started after the summer holidays, as we had moderately strict dress codes back then, even in regular schools. A visit to a department store was considered by 7-year-old me to be something of a treat, as a department store held many wonders for a little kid in that bygone age. There's also something particularly interesting in those days, something I'd completely forgotten about, until I randomly saw an article about it the other day. Some shoe stores in those days had a fluoroscope, which was an X-ray device that allowed you to view moving images rather than viewing a static exposed image. These were specifically meant to aid in the fitting of shoes, since you could try on the shoe and see a moving X-ray image of your foot inside the shoe. The store we often went to in my little hometown was called Hurston's, and it was just swanky enough to have one of these devices. They came under various brand names, but were essentially a shoe-fitting fluoroscope. It looked like a wooden podium, maybe 4 feet tall, with 3 viewing ports on the top, where the kid, the parent, and the salesperson could all view the toes wiggling inside the shoe in a delightfully creepy monochrome green display. You would step up to the podium, put your foot into an aperture, and look into the viewing port. The salesperson would then zap your foot for a few seconds, and everyone would be entertained by the event. These devices are credited to a Dr. Jacob Lowe of Boston, Massachusetts, in the aftermath of World War I, and were originally conceived as an aid in diagnosing foot problems in veterans. The commercial possibilities of this quickly became apparent, and shoe-fitting fluoroscopes were in use from the late 1920s to even the early 1970s in the USA, Canada, and the UK. They were touted as a modern and scientific way to provide proper shoe fitting for kids and adults. Now, needless to say, a growing awareness of the potential hazards of radiation exposure led to some scrutiny and legislation, and by the 1960s, most states in the USA had prohibited their use. Their use did linger a bit longer in the UK, as my experience with them would have been in the mid-60s. While there don't appear to have been any highly publicized lawsuits directly linked to injuries from shoe-fitting fluoroscopes, there were documented cases of severe radiation injuries, including a shoe model whose leg had to be amputated due to radiation burns, which is pretty ghastly. As far as I know, I have not suffered any ill effects, but I can imagine that a salesperson who might be exposed to, a dozen or more X-ray sessions every day might have fared less well. Now, I also confess to being one of those kids who actually handled mercury a few times in school, when a glass thermometer broke in science class. And my friends and I would also play outside, largely unsupervised, until the streetlights came on, when it was generally accepted to be time to return home. Yeah, I know, it was kind of a different era. It honestly makes me wonder how we survive sometimes. Anyway, thanks for enduring my reminiscences, and I will catch you next time.